The Ashanti Empire. The Ashanti Empire, also known as the Asante Empire, was a pre-colonial West African state established by the Akan people in what is now the Ashanti region of Ghana. From 1701 to 1896, it existed as an independent entity known as the Ashanti Confederacy, or Asanteman. The name Asante translates to because of war in the TWI language, derived from the words Osa meaning war, and NTI meaning because of. This name reflects the origins of the Ashanti Kingdom, which was formed to combat the Denkira Kingdom. The variant name Ashanti emerged from British accounts attempting to transcribe the pronunciation of Asante as heard by the British. Eventually, the hyphenation was dropped, and the name Ashanti became the commonly used term. The military strength of the Ashanti Empire, attributed to their effective warfare strategies and early adoption of European rifles, allowed them to expand their dominion from central Ghana to present-day Togo and Côte d'Ivoire. The empire shared borders with the Dagomba Kingdom to the north and Dahomey to the east. Due to its military might, well-developed hierarchical structure, social stratification, and rich culture, the Ashanti Empire garnered extensive historical documentation by English sources compared to other indigenous sub-Saharan African polities. Today, the Ashanti monarchy endures as one of the constitutionally protected sub-national traditional states within the Republic of Ghana. The origin of the Ashanti Kingdom. The Ashanti, also known as the Asante, represent a prominent ethnic group within Ghana. Originating from the area near the northwestern Niger River, the ancient Ashanti migrated after the decline of the Ghana Empire in the 13th century. Around the same period, the Ashanti, along with other Akan peoples, moved into the forest region of present-day Ghana and established small states in the hilly terrain surrounding what is now Kumasi. During the flourishing era of the Mali Empire, the Ashanti, along with the broader Akan population, amassed wealth through gold trade from their territory. In the early stages of Ashanti history, this gold was exchanged with the influential Ghana and Mali empires. One notable figure from this period is Okomfo Anokye, the first priest of the Ashanti Empire. Anokye played a significant role in expanding the empire and was instrumental in codifying the constitution and laws of the Ashanti Empire. Born in Ghana around 1655, according to Akwa Pem tradition, he hailed from Awukugwa in the Nifa division of the Okere state, being the son of Ano and Ya Anubeya. Anokye's birth was accompanied by extraordinary occurrences, such as being gifted totem poles tightly clasped in his palms that no one could open, as well as a short white tail of a cow, Podua, held in his other hand. When Osei Kofi Tutu I ascended to the throne of the Kumasiman state between approximately 1680 and 1695, leading a coalition of Akan forest states around Kumasi, Anokye became his advisor and chief priest. Tutu and Anokye, whose contributions are inseparable, pursued an expansionist policy, successfully overcoming two formidable adversaries, the Akan Doma to the northwest and the Denkyera Empire to the south. Another significant factor in centralizing power under Osei Tutu was the introduction of the Golden Stool, Sika Dwa. Legend has it that prior to breaking away from Denkyera, a gathering was convened involving all the clan leaders from various Ashanti settlements. During this assembly, Okomfo Anokye, the sage advisor and priest, summoned the golden stool from the heavens, which descended directly into the lap of Osei Tutu first. Anokye proclaimed the stool as the emblem of the newly formed Asante Union, Asanteman, and loyalty was pledged to both the Golden Stool and Osei Tutu as the Asantehene, king of the Ashanti. With the establishment of the Ashanti Union, they waged war against Denkyera and emerged victorious. The Golden Stool remains revered by the Ashanti, believed to house the Sunsum, the spirit or soul of the Ashanti people, the kingdom formation. An Akan political organization revolved around different clans, each led by a paramount chief known as an Amanhin. Among these clans, the Oyoko settled in Ghana's subtropical forest region and established a hub in Kumasi. As the Akan state of Denkyera ascended, the Ashanti became subservient to them. However, in the mid-17th century, the Oyoko clan, led by Chief Oti Akinten, began amalgamating other Ashanti clans into a loose confederation. This unification was achieved without undermining the authority of each paramount chief over their respective clans. While military tactics played a role, the primary unifying force was their shared opposition to the Denkira, who previously dominated the area. Independence came to the forefront. In the 1670s, Osei Kofi Tutu I, the leader of the Oyoko clan, initiated a rapid consolidation of Akan peoples through both diplomacy and warfare. Alongside his chief advisor, Okomfo Kwame Frimpong Anokie, King Osei Kofi Tutu I formed a coalition of influential Ashanti city-states against their common oppressor, the Denkira, who regarded Asanteman as one of their tributaries. Asanteman achieved a resounding victory over the Denkira at the Battle of Fayasi, declaring its independence in 1701. Through a combination of robust military tactics and skilled diplomacy, the duo persuaded leaders of other Ashanti city-states to pledge allegiance and loyalty to Kumasi, the Ashanti capital. King Osei Tutu and priest Anokie pursued an expansionist and imperialistic provincial foreign policy right from the beginning. Under Osei Tutu's rule, Asanteman recognized the advantages of a loose confederation of Akan states and strengthened centralization by empowering the judicial system within the centralized government. Consequently, this loose confederation of small city-states transformed into a kingdom or empire with ambitions of expanding its borders. Newly conquered territories had the choice to either join the empire or become tributary states. Opoku-ware I, the successor of Osei Tutu, further expanded the empire's boundaries, encompassing a significant portion of present-day Ghana's territory. Geography. Among the coastal kingdoms, including Dahomey, Benin, and Oyo, the Ashanti Empire stood as one of the notable entities. These kingdoms thrived on trade, particularly in valuable commodities like gold, ivory, and slaves, which were initially traded with Portuguese traders and later with the Dutch and British. The region boasted dense populations and abundant agricultural surpluses, which facilitated the establishment of thriving urban centers. By 1874, the Ashanti Empire had gained control over an expansive territory spanning more than 250,000 square kilometers and ruled approximately 3 million people. Economy. The lands within the realm of Asanteman were blessed with plentiful river gold and kola nuts. Consequently, the Ashanti engaged in trade with the Songhai Empire, the Hausa states, and the Portuguese at the coastal fort São Jorge da Mina, later known as Elmina. Profits from the slave trade played a significant role in elevating the Ashanti Empire to a prominent position within the region. Government. The Ashanti government was structured around a sophisticated bureaucracy situated in Kumasi, with distinct ministries responsible for managing various state affairs. Notably, the Ashanti Foreign Office, located in Kumasi, played a crucial role. Despite its modest size, the Ashanti Foreign Office enabled the state to engage in intricate diplomatic negotiations with foreign powers. It included separate departments dedicated to handling relations with the British, French, Dutch, and Arabs individually. Scholars like Larry Yarrick and Ivor Wilkes hold differing views on the actual power wielded by this sophisticated bureaucracy in comparison to the Asantehene, the Ashanti king. But they concur that its existence indicates a highly developed government system with a complex framework of checks and balances. The Asantehene. At the apex of Ashanti's power structure resided the Asantehene, the king of Ashanti. Each Asantehene ascended to the throne by being crowned upon the revered golden stool, known as the Sika Dwa, which came to symbolize the king's ultimate authority. Osei Kwadwo, 1764-1777, initiated a system where central officials were appointed based on their competence rather than their lineage. While wielding immense power, the Asantehene did not possess absolute royal rule, but instead shared significant legislative and executive powers with Ashanti's sophisticated bureaucracy. The Asantehene held the exclusive right to invoke the death penalty in Ashanti. During times of war, the king assumed the role of supreme commander of the army, although actual combat operations during the 19th century were increasingly managed by the Ministry of War in Kumasi. Each member of the Confederacy was required to provide annual tribute to Kumasi. The Ashanti Hine, the ruler of all Ashanti and the chief of the Kumasi division, governed over the entire nation. Their election followed the same process as other chiefs. Within this hierarchical structure, each chief pledged allegiance to the one above them, from villages and subdivisions to divisions, and ultimately to the chief of Kumasi, while the Ashanti Hine swore loyalty to the state. The power of the Ashanti Hine was circumscribed by the elders and the will of the people, representing public opinion. Furthermore, chiefs from other divisions played a significant role in checking the king's power. As a result, a system of checks and balances was established. However, as the embodiment of the nation, the Ashanti Hine received considerable ceremonial deference, as the context surrounding their position was deeply rooted in religion, symbolizing the people, past, present, and future, in flesh and spirit. In the event that the king acted against the approval of the Council of Elders, or the people, impeachment and subsequent demotion to a common citizen were possible outcomes. The existence of aristocratic organizations and the Council of Elders demonstrated a tendency toward oligarchy in Ashanti's political life. While older men tended to monopolize political power, Ashanti introduced an organization of young men known as the Numerate, which served to democratize and liberalize the political process. The Council of Elders made decisions only after consulting with a representative of the young men, whose opinions carried weight and were duly incorporated into the discourse. The Ashanti armies. The Ashanti armies proved to be invaluable to the empire, playing a crucial role in its extensive period of expansion and its subsequent resistance against European colonization. While firearms formed their primary armament, some historians argue that indigenous organization and leadership likely played a more decisive part in the Ashanti's triumphs. This becomes even more noteworthy when considering that the Ashanti incorporated troops from various conquered peoples who, throughout their long history, staged numerous revolts and rebellions. However, the political brilliance of the symbolic Golden Stool and the unifying effect of a national army ensured the empire's sustainability. With a potential strength of approximately 80,000 to 200,000 soldiers, the Ashanti army surpassed the more renowned Zulu force and was comparable to Africa's largest military, the Ethiopian legions. Described as a formidable and well-organized fighting force, the Ashanti army boasted a king capable of mobilizing 200,000 men into the field, whose warriors showed no fear in the face of Snider rifles and 7-pounder guns. Although the actual number of troops deployed in the field fell short of their potential strength, tens of thousands of soldiers were typically available to serve the empire's needs. Mobilization relied on small units of regulars who guided and directed levies and contingents summoned by provincial governors. The Ashanti Army's organization revolved around an advance guard, main body, rear guard, and flanking elements on the right and left wings. This structure provided flexibility in the forested terrain where the Ashanti armies predominantly operated. Their approach to the battlefield often involved converging columns, employing tactics such as ambushes and extensive maneuvers on the flanks. Setting them apart from other African armies, the Ashanti also deployed medical units to provide support for their fighters. Over the span of a century, this force grew significantly and continually, successfully defeating the British in multiple encounters. European contact. European contact with the Ivory Coast region of Africa commenced in the 15th century, sparking a flourishing trade in ivory, slaves, and various commodities. This trade network played a pivotal role in the emergence of powerful kingdoms like the Ashanti. In the year 1817, an Englishman named Thomas Bowditch arrived in Kumasi, where he stayed for several months. Deeply impressed by what he witnessed, Bowditch penned a book called Mission from Cape Coast Castle to Ashanti upon his return to England. Regrettably, his account contradicted prevailing biases and was met with skepticism. Subsequently, Joseph Dupuy, the first British consul in Kumasi, arrived on March 23, 1820. Both Bowditch and Dupuy managed to secure a treaty with the Asante Hene, the ruler of the Ashanti. However, the governor at the time, Hope Smith, failed to meet the expectations of the Ashanti people. During the period spanning from 1806 to 1896, The Asante Union remained in a constant state of warfare, either expanding its territory or defending its domain. The Asante's military exploits against other African forces elevated them to become the dominant power in the region. Their remarkable resistance against the British forces also garnered admiration from European nations. Although often overshadowed by the Zulu, the Asanteman stands as one of the few African states to decisively defeat the British Empire, not only in a single battle, but throughout an entire war. Asante-Fante War. In the year 1806, the Ashanti pursued a pair of rebel leaders, traversing Fante territory until reaching the coastal region. The British, refusing to surrender the rebels, faced an Ashanti assault. The impact of this attack was severe, compelling the British to surrender one rebel, while the other managed to evade capture. Subsequently, in 1807, conflicts between the Ashanti and the Fante escalated into the Ashanti-Fante War, ultimately resulting in an Ashanti triumph under the leadership of Asantehene Osei Bonsu, commonly known as Osei the Whale. Gafante War. During the 1811 Gafante War, an alliance comprising the Asante and Ga peoples engaged in conflict against a coalition formed by the Fante, Akwapim, and Akim states. In the initial stages, the Asante forces demonstrated their military prowess by triumphing over the alliance in direct confrontations. Nonetheless, despite their early successes, the Asante were unable to decisively defeat their adversaries and eventually had to retreat from the Akwapim Hills due to the relentless guerrilla tactics employed against them. Notwithstanding this setback, the Asante did achieve the capture of a British fort during the course of the war. Ashanti-Akim-Akwapim War. In 1814, the Ashanti initiated an incursion into the Gold Coast with the primary objective of securing interactions with European merchants. This military campaign, known as the Ashanti-Akim-Akwapim War, pitted the Ashanti Kingdom against the alliance formed by Akim and Akwapim. Throughout the conflict, a series of battles ensued, some favoring the Ashanti, while others favored the outnumbered Akim-Akwapim alliance. Eventually, the war came to an end. Despite the Akim-Akwapim alliance winning significant battles and experiencing moments of triumph, Asanteman successfully established its presence along the coast by 1816. Anglo-Ashanti Wars. The First Anglo-Ashanti War. The initial conflict between the Anglo-Ashanti powers took place in 1823. During these confrontations, the Ashanti Kingdom engaged with varying degrees of success against the British Empire, which resided along the coastline. The root cause of the dispute can be traced back to 1823, when Sir Charles McCarthy, declining all attempts at negotiation by the Ashanti, led an invading expedition. The Ashanti emerged victorious, defeating and killing McCarthy, and even claiming his head as a trophy before advancing towards the coast. However, due to the outbreak of disease, they were compelled to retreat. Subsequently, the Ashanti displayed remarkable success in subsequent battles, prompting them to once again approach the coast in 1826. Initially, they engaged in an impressive open battle against larger British and Denkiran forces. However, the introduction of British rockets caused the Ashanti army to withdraw. In 1831, a treaty was signed, resulting in a 30-year period of peace with the Pra River established as the accepted border. The Second Anglo-Ashanti War. Except for a handful of minor Ashanti skirmishes along the Pra in 1853 and 1854, the period of peace between Asanteman and the British Empire had endured uninterrupted for over 3 decades. However, in 1863, a significant Ashanti delegation crossed the river in pursuit of a fugitive named Kwesi Gyana. This led to clashes and casualties on both sides, yet the governor's plea for troops from England was denied, and the withdrawal of his West Indian troops became necessary due to illness. Ultimately, the war concluded in 1864 as a stalemate, as both factions suffered more losses from sickness than from any other cause. The Third Anglo-Ashanti War. In 1869, a European missionary family arrived in Kumasi, where they received a warm welcome. However, their presence eventually became a pretext for war in 1873. Furthermore, Britain took control of Ashanti land that had been claimed by the Dutch, leading to an invasion by the Ashanti into the newly established British protectorate. In response to the Ashanti aggression, General Wolseley and his renowned Wolseley Ring were dispatched to confront them. This conflict marked a modern war, extensively covered by the press, including the notable reporter Henry Morton Stanley, and accompanied by detailed military and medical instructions for the troops. Despite appeals, the British government refused to intervene in the activities of British armaments manufacturers who were freely selling weapons to both sides. Regrettably, all attempts at negotiations by the Ashanti were ignored. Under Wolseley's leadership, a force of 2,500 British troops, along with several thousand West Indian and African troops, marched towards Kumasi. They briefly occupied the capital, marveling at the grandeur of the palace and its vast contents, which included rows of books in many languages. However, the Ashanti had already abandoned the city following a brutal war, and the British ultimately resorted to burning it. Although the British and their allies suffered significant casualties, including numerous soldiers and high-ranking officers, their overwhelming firepower proved insurmountable for the Ashanti. Consequently, the Asantehene, the king of the Ashanti, signed a British treaty in July 1874, effectively bringing an end to the war. The Fourth Anglo-Ashanti War. In 1891, the Ashanti declined an informal proposal to become a British protectorate. The British, eager to prevent French colonial forces from entering Ashanti territory and gaining access to its abundant gold, were determined to fully conquer Asantaman. Although negotiations were underway to establish it as a British protectorate, Britain initiated the Fourth Anglo-Ashanti War in 1894, citing the Asante monarch's alleged failure to pay fines imposed after the 1874 war. Ultimately, the British emerged victorious, compelling Asantaman to sign a treaty of protection. Fall of Asantaman. Sir Francis Scott embarked on an expedition from Cape Coast in December 1895, reaching Kumasi in January 1896. The Asantehene issued instructions to the Ashanti, urging them not to offer any resistance. Shortly thereafter, Governor William Maxwell arrived in Kumasi, accompanied by the deposition and arrest of Asantehene Agyeman Prempeh. In 1896, Britain proceeded to annex the territories of the Ashanti and the Fanti, resulting in the exile of Ashanti leaders to the Seychelles. Consequently, the Asante Union was dissolved. Leading the British forces in this campaign was Robert Baden-Powell. The coastal regions were formally declared as the Gold Coast Colony by the British, with the establishment of a permanent British resident in the city and the subsequent construction of a British fort. Ashanti Uprising of 1900. As a final act of resistance, the remaining members of the Asante court who were not exiled to the Seychelles launched an attack on the British residents stationed at the Kumasi fort. Leading the resistance was Ya Asantewa, the Queen Mother of Ejisu. From March 28th to late September 1900, the Asante and British forces clashed in what would later be known as the War of the Golden Stool. Ultimately, Asantewa and other Asante leaders were also sent to the Seychelles to join Prempeh Worst. In January 1902, Britain officially incorporated Asante into its protectorates on the Gold Coast. Although the Asante Empire still holds sway over various territories, its power has diminished compared to ancient times.